What's up, guys? I wanted to share a little bit today about some tips on how to engage your audience in comics. I recently got an indie comic in the mail that was a really well-made, good-looking comic, but the first 3 pages of it was narration that was just basically talking at me. You've all seen a movie where you set at the beginning and there's a narrator telling you what's the setup is, a long time ago there were dragons and so on and so forth. You can handle that a little bit, but imagine watching a whole movie or 15, 20 minutes of a movie like that. It would get to be very uninteresting because you're not really partaking in anything other than being talked at. And so that's what we're trying to work on. And there's some tips that you can do to help make that happen. So I want to use this page here. This is a page of a comic called State of Contempt. This is inked digitally. This is something I've been starting to do lately for the sake of speed. I'm kind of getting my workflow down as fast as I can. One of the things that I do with digital drawings that helps me feel like it's a little bit more traditional is I'll bring in a lot of custom-made textures that I've pre-made traditionally. This background here that we're looking at is something that a splatter that I had already made for another project, saved it and placed it in, and then in some cases flipped it and reversed it like in these shadow areas. But that makes it feel a little less digital, and that's what I'm usually going for when I'm working on a digital piece, is just trying to make it not feel so digital. So I really want to try and get the line to have nice line variants, stuff like that. I'm getting off topic a little bit. So what we want to talk about is immersing and engaging your audience, not just having boring stuff. So rule number 1 would be have your characters doing something. It's very easy to have characters that are just standing and talking. So that's kind of what this shot right here is. So this is a shot here where these two characters are just sort of standing and talking to each other, and I see this a lot on early comic book creators. I used to do this myself. And so what you want to try and do to make things more interesting or engaging is to have them doing something, particularly with their hands or their arms. If you just have a head, talking head, or a head on a body, you end up with something that looks a lot like cyanide and happiness, which can look a little bit boring. So what you want to do instead is have your characters moving, have their arms moving, have their facial expressions changing. In this particular scene here, this is actually a difficult one for me. I had to redraw it several times. You have this character leaning forward and looking downward, which guides the eye. And then this character is looking up at him, and his hand is, kind of giving the gesture of like, what do you want? Talking about, that kind of thing. So there's some visual communication kind of going on. Over here with this hand, he's setting his Bible down or looking, maybe picking it up, one of the two. Then we come over here, and I could have just had this character standing there, but I wanted to give a little bit of movement to this page because most of it is just them standing and talking. So instead of rather having him stand there, I went for sort of jumping down off of the top bunk and getting some movement going. This also helps with this nice, long panel space that I had to fit right here. Then we change it up and zoom in on a close-up with strong facial expression to go along with what the character is saying right here. And so that's tip number 2, is not only do you want to have your characters doing something, but you want to use lots of facial expressions whenever you can. Facial expressions and body language both will make it a lot more engaging. Tip number 3 is going to be to change up your zoom, a varying zoom. So here again, we have this close-up, and then right after that, we pull far back and we have this wide shot. I'm sure you guys have seen this from me in a previous tutorial. I actually learned this from watching it, something from Todd McFarlane at one point. If you want to find how much you're zooming in and out and kind of check yourself, all you have to do is draw a circle around your characters' heads. And if they're all the same size, then you know you're not changing your zooms very much. Okay, so this gives you an idea of how much I'm zooming in and out. There's not a whole lot of variance, but there's just enough here, especially in these two panels right here, to give it some visual interest. One of the last things I want to talk about are contrast and identifiers. Wherever you have a character, particularly a character's face, but a character in general, you want to create contrast so that our eye goes to them quickly. With this character right here, one of his big contrast points is his big black tank top. When we see him up against this black, very textured background, there's a lot of different ways that contrast is being created. Number one, obviously, is the shirt being dark on his light skin. Number two is that his skin is not nearly as textured as the background. So he stands out from that background. And then number three, right here in the area of the head, you can see how it's very dark in texture here and very light here. So that creates another contrast point. Same thing is happening right here with this character's head and upper body. The light amount of texture and detail in the face keeps the values light, and then all this area right around here is very dark, creating a quick contrast right to his face. Over here on this panel, obviously the shirt is the big contrast point. Another way that you can create quick contrast to get people's eye to focus in on an area is by using dramatic lighting. So here, by creating this lighting, we create texture and shadow on this side of the face. Without that, if I had just left it alone, it would be just thin lines on a white background. It wouldn't have much contrast. So that's one of the reasons why I chose to add contrast and shading at that point. And then the last thing that I mentioned a second ago that I want to talk about is identifiers. Especially when you have a comic that has a lot of different characters in it, you want to create identifiers so that we can quickly see and make them out even if they're from far away. For this character here, I chose to design the character to have this black tank top, which varied and made him different looking than all the other prisoners that we'll see in this set. It's not necessarily practical that he would be the only character that would have a black tank top, so it's not exactly fitting to realism. But sometimes you have to break out of that in order to create good visual storytelling. Now he's some character that's very easily noticed. So then this other character here, he's got sort of this flat top going, and very inspired by Duke from G.I. Joe when I was sketching him. The reason that this is important in this particular comic is that all these characters' jumpsuits are going to be orange. And so I want to make sure and be able to quickly decipher one from another. All right, so that's pretty much it for today. I just wanted to go over some quick tips that show how to create a more engaging story, and that is have your characters doing something and interacting with each other in scenes. Have them moving their hands, change the facial expressions as much as you can. Have them always doing something. Change up your zoom, how much you're zooming in and out. Create contrast points with backgrounds. In another video, I'll talk about backgrounds and environments and how environments is part of the storytelling and a really important part that you don't want to miss out. So I hope you found that useful. Look for more of these videos on patreon.com and YouTube channel as well at Matt Campbell Art. Thank you so much to the patrons who support on Patreon who make this possible. If you're seeing this video on YouTube, please check out our Patreon at patreon.com/ActionAlignStudios. Thanks so much. Have a great day.